Hi, Matthew here. Welcome to my presentation on the ePortfolio I'm developing for our shared program. Greetings to my colleagues and to Dr. Sidoni. I've trialed this medium for presenting pretty much as a prototype for the final assessment. I hope it's not too rough and ready, literally recorded in the bedroom. I'm going to try to keep it under 10 minutes, and at the end of the presentation, the video presentation, I'll be available for any questions and discussion. Thank you. Very simple structure, 3 best practice models, discussion, and some reflection at the end of the presentation. Good. Moving now to the second sample, best practice example. This was a lesson basically focused on style and style in academic writing, with a focus on register, for example, and genre differences, hoping to get students to realize what elements in writing contributed to the formation of style, how to formalize their writing style, and when needed, deformalize it, perhaps with certain types of persuasive writing. I've included this particular lesson for an interesting reason, is that in the second quarter of the lesson, it fell over terribly. The first quarter had been fantastic, just an off-the-cuff discussion of style, individual style, for example, and then I made the mistake of thinking, okay, let's try and augment that discussion with a little bit of technology, and as you can see, poorly chosen content will never be recompensed for by any amount of technology, bells and whistles, for example. Bear with me, I hope you find this sort of confessional instructive. Okay, so what happened? I screwed up. Content that is interesting to me wasn't interesting to the students. I thought maybe a short history of pop culture from the late 1960s to punk rock in the late 70s and early 80s might be a way to model, I guess, what style can mean in various ways, and to link that hopefully to writing. But it was a big mistake. Live and learn, I guess. What went wrong? Well, I discussed that in the reflections at a later stage. I just think that the students had no reference point to connect with the content. For me, the big learning was what interests you, the teacher, may not, sometimes, probably not, interest the students. So be careful. Also, no matter what technology you use, broadcast images, clips of bands from that particular time in pop history, the students just weren't into it. Oh well, what can you say? Life goes on. Then the question becomes what to do next. Yes, recovery mode, damage control. Basically, we're only halfway through the lesson when this sort of catastrophe occurred. Think on your feet. That's one of the reasons I like being a teacher. It's challenging. Sometimes these situations do occur, and it's up to you to try to work your way out of this particular circumstance. What I did was to use technology, but very traditional technology, and I returned to the PowerPoint. I returned to a very passive style of learning and teaching, and only 10 or so minutes, but I worked through the rest of the slides with the students, a little bit of think, pair, share for sure, but kept it very, very straight. And then I thought, look, I'll put the lesson focus on style in writing to one side and completely reload the focus of the lesson. I had asked students previously to think about a particular topic that they might be interested in discussing, and so I turned to that with the intention of developing a Slido to make that transition from one topic, style in academic writing, to the next and hopefully more interactive and engaging phase of the lesson. Well, not quite panicking, but certainly feeling the heat a little bit at this stage. My original plan was to put out 2 or 3 possible topics that I had chosen to the students via a Slido, just to start to, normalize the lesson after the previous catastrophe, shall we say, and try to push it forward in a much more productive way. And then a voice in my head, and it was David's voice. Why not ask the students to choose the topic? Wow, great idea. Thanks, David. Next thought, okay, I'll ask the students to choose a topic, several tables. I will collate those topics into a Slido and ask students to vote in a poll on which topic they might like to turn to next. And then another voice appeared, and it was the voice of Dr. Sidoni. Matthew, why not ask the students to create the Slido? OMG. Guardian angels, the pair of them. Anyway, the lesson went from the terrible to the terrific. Quite extraordinary for me, actually. One to see that transformation, and a lot of it was certainly facilitated by educational technology integration. The other element which I felt particularly happy with was that only one student in the group knew about Slido and how to create a Slido, and so I handed the lesson over to Koi Heng. I said, look, you're now the teacher. And he took on the role very, very confidently, walked from table to table. I functioned as his tech assistant, basically, as he ran the rest of his classmates through the various stages in creating a Slido. That was possibly the most outstanding aspect of it, and it's led me to think more and more about possibilities for student-led learning in the future.
Okay, nearly there, folks. Thank you for your tolerance. Apologies for any variation in the sound in this recording. Now, this lesson, it was basically conceived in that hour before the first lesson started at 8:30. And sometimes those lessons are the best lessons you can ever present, slightly spontaneous. Other times they fall over terribly. Thankfully, this lesson went really, really well. Very happy with it, and so much of it, again, due to the integration of educational technology into the processes of the learning and teaching. The main technologies, AI image generation, again, that standard, which I use all the time, the SharePoint active document that students can post into, and of course Telegram as that almost instantaneous communication device that students like, and it just seems to work very, very well. Main focus of the lesson major LLO, about what I term the 3F principle. The form of writing follows its function, its purpose, relative to the audience of the writing. I'd already discussed that with the students previously, so there wasn't, too much need for theory
via a PowerPoint, for example. And look, a little bit of a hypocritical admission here. Given we're moving towards the end of summer semester, it's been a very intense semester. Both of my groups in this semester have been very, I don't know what the right word is, but it hasn't been a whole deal of fun working with a group that seems to be almost a little bit traumatized. And so I decided, let's do something which is both theoretical and fun.
So quite a range of rationales for my application of educational technology into this particular lesson. The slightly innovative, different rationales for me, situated learning theory, whereby I really tried to contextualize the topic to the learner's cultural experience and knowledge, and indeed age-specific interests. Well, I think I ticked that box. The lesson ticked that box. The other area, certainly principles of UDL stood out as one of the key rationales for the way I integrated, in particular AI, into the lesson on the spiders from Scone. On this slide, some student examples, some generated by the students themselves, some generated via ChatGPT. And that was okay. I encouraged them to use ChatGPT. For me, in terms of the more formal objectives of the lesson, it was going to be the analysis of the marketing slogans in terms of the language features, what techniques were employed in order to possibly persuade an audience in terms of the product, which was the spiders of Scone. The next step in the situated learning approach to most of this particular lesson was then to ask students to try via, again, AI image generating software online, a t-shirt. Now, t-shirts very much part of this student cohort's generation, for example, and they took to this task with, again, great curiosity and enthusiasm, and they turned out some fantastic designs. Again, certainly mostly via AI, but that's okay. That's okay. The plan then was, again, to analyze, but it also prompted a discussion on entrepreneurship, business, marketing, and what I might term English for specific purposes that, again, the students found, engaging. And some of the designs I'm going to present downstairs in the area outside the cafeteria as a display, and that's been one of the really great parts of this lesson, is that it almost started in the jungle while I was on the cultural immersion and charity trip in central Cambodia. The ideas started to formulate, and it's going to have a postscript as well with the exhibition of students' t-shirt designs. All right, well, that's all, folks. I hope there have been some elements there that have grabbed your attention, and the following 3 slides or so are just my outtakes from this particular exercise, some reflections on various elements to do with educational technology integration. I've really enjoyed the program with Dr. Sidoni and, of course, my fellow participants. And yes, let's keep the discourse going. Let's keep that community of practice alive. Thank you.